Welcome to Carl and Heather Present,
the podcast where we dive into the insights, challenges, and humor of being married to someone who is nothing like you.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
Oh, don't you know it's Carl and Heather Present Marriage Podcast.
Welcome to Carl and Heather Present, everyone. Today, our guests are Tony and Venita Mitchell.
Hello.
Hello, Venita.
Good
Tony.
to see you guys again.
Yeah,
From Atlanta,
absolutely.
Georgia.
Atlanta.
Tony, you're not on social media, but it's okay. That's one of the things I like about you. You guys have been married for 39 years, 40 years soon in November.
Yep.
Oh, happy anniversary early.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you guys on the podcast. I asked you what one quirk was about your marriage, and we're going to get into a lot about your marriage.
Okay.
Just interview you guys. But Tony said that one quirk that you have, Venita, is that when you rewatch movies, you don't remember what happens in the movie, and it's like you're watching it for the first time.
That is so true.
That's
I
actually
have
a
no
gift.
memory. I have no memory of
Like a
details.
goldfish.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember the details. I know I like a movie. Like
Yeah.
I'll remember the opening and the things that I like. Like there's excitement and stuff coming. But as the movie goes on, I just take it in and then it goes
Yeah.
out. Right.
Yes.
So I don't know quotes. I don't know anything. And then when we're watching it again, I'll be like, oh my gosh, it could be the third time.
I love
Yeah.
it.
So
All right.
So we
awesome.
we enjoy watching her rewatch
Yeah.
a movie. Yeah.
Wow.
It's-
Yeah.
Double
Tony,
entertainment.
Venita, does Tony have any quirks?
Tony has many quirks.
Many quirks,
He's
okay.
got a lot.
Pick
so
one.
I'm going to pick one.
Okay.
There's this, he likes to pick on me.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of his love language, is just doing little things like,
Okay.
and he'll tap the other side. He always taps the other shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll look
Classic.
the wrong way. And,
Right,
and
right.
it gets him every time. He loves it, right?
Yeah.
But I've learned to just ignore it over time.
Yes.
So it doesn't faze me, and he'll just keep doing it. And I'm just like, I am ignoring you.
He's oblivious. Right.
Yeah, I'm oblivious. And people, when they see us having this exchange, they're like, she's just ignoring you. He goes, I know. That's how it goes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he knows I do acknowledge. Usually at the end of the day, I'll be like, you know, I love you. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, that's his love language. But he
You-
is
you-
always picking on me.
You got a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And I love making Heather laugh, but
Yes.
I have to work harder and harder
I know.
to get it. Is that the
Yes.
same thing? Because
Yeah.
she will
Can't
ignore me.
recycle,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. You
Yeah.
really got to stay up
Yeah.
on your.
Yeah. I have
On
to
your-
come up with new dad jokes because the kids in Venita, they're just like, okay, we've
That's
heard
the
that
other
one
thing.
5 times.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the other thing. So when I really laugh at one, he knows it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's like, you got it. Okay, tell us about your family.
Okay, well, we have 2 adult children. They're in their 30s, and one of them lives in London, our daughter. So we're really excited that she's over there and learning and doing the things that she wants to do. And our son is an accountant. He's a tax accountant.
Okay.
Lives 30 minutes. So one is 30 minutes, one is 3,000 miles.
Oh,
You know, so yeah. And what else about
Yeah.
our kids?
Yeah. They're good kids. We love them.
Yeah.
Gonna keep them?
Yes, we're going to keep them. We're going to keep,
Keep them.
We hope
Yeah,
they keep
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Right.
So
But they're good.
they're
We love them.
great. Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, the podcast is really a podcast about marriage
Okay.
and being married to somebody who's nothing like you, or how to unify around challenges and differences, so that from those things, you come together around, your unique strengths, but together you can find a purpose. And so
Yes.
I've heard you guys tell your story. We've had dinner together before, and I think it'd be great for our listeners just to hear it as well, because I think there's something buried in your story that people can find some life in and some hope in. And so, Tony, you have had a lot of success as a business leader, as C-level executive in several corporations, a lot of leadership experience. And I was thinking about this when we were going to I love talking to you. I love talking about business and learning from you. I was thinking about this in your role. When you're leading a corporation, people that you lead have somewhat of a professional obligation to do what you say.
Yes.
Or to follow you. You know
Yes.
what I mean? And so, no, you want to do it with a servant heart. And I know you, by nature, you're a servant leader. But in the professional context, there's this expectation. It's like, hey, we follow the leader because we get paid to follow him.
Yeah.
That's the boardroom. But in the living room,
Yes.
at home,
Yes.
you have leadership skills. You have, the responsibility to lead your family in your home. But I wondered what you would have to say to the person who's leading a home. You might lead a business, but what leadership distinctions do you have to make when you're leading a home? Because those people don't necessarily
have to.
agree as quickly.
Right. And I love your word distinction. It is a distinction. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so two things there's many things that I think we can talk about that are distinctions, but two distinctions I would say is one, when we come home, we think we lead our family the same way. And of course, as you said, that just isn't the case. So we can come into our home and think that people should just follow us. That's not the case. Yeah. At work, many times when you're in a senior position, people are looking for you to give direction. And at home, they're looking for you to listen to their heart. And it's very different. Now, you can do that in work. I think that's very appropriate to listen. Yeah. But the expectation is even different. It's like, Dad, you're not here to teach us every day. You're here to hear, how my day went, what's going on, or our wives, how her day went. Venita will take a long time to tell a story. If I was at work, it would be like, hey, you got to be a lot more concise because we've got other meetings. That's not going to work with Venita. So I think that's one is just much more of a listening expectation and a high relational expectation at home than it is at work. Yeah. Now, on the flip side, many of us, and I say this when we spoke together to the men, many times at work, we can recognize good leadership. We go, yes, micromanagement is bad leadership. Servant leader is good leadership. For you to be able to listen to the people that you work with. But then when we get home, we forget all of that. And I call it leadership amnesia. Yeah. As soon as we walk in the home, we have leadership amnesia and we forget what a good leader is. So we can be just as effective as at home if we take those good leadership skills that we recognize and the poor leadership skills that we don't like in other leaders, and we make sure we remember those when we walk in the house. Wow.
Okay, so how do guys make that shift? Because you have to shift back and forth because you are a leader at work and a provider, and you are a leader at home and a servant. You want to give direction, clear direction. That's great. It's a positive thing. You want to be a good listener, and sometimes you're clear on what work needs from you.
Yes.
Sometimes when you go home, it's like, what do you need direction from me? Do you need a listening ear? Making that shift back and forth can be difficult for a lot of guys. So what would you have to say to that?
Can I just interrupt? One thing I've been wanting to say.
Jump on in there, Venita.
We don't know. The thing about the home, the people who know you is it's not like the leadership isn't, the direction isn't the priority in the family. We all want to go our own ways. We all want to do things the way we want to do them. It's not that we don't need it, but it's not our priority. Right. And it's a collaboration. It's not just how you want the direction you want to take us in. And sometimes that conflict comes in. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not a guy, but it's not that we don't want to lead. It's just we want to be a team because we all want to go. Right. We all have different things. If we work together, you can get us where we need to go. Yeah. But sometimes I think that there's not that mindset that this is a team effort. And so we all may have to work at a common goal instead of it falling in the guy's lap.
Right. Which is also the same case in a corporate environment. Totally. You can be a dictator, and none of us like to work for a dictator. So therefore, we wouldn't want that at home. So at home, one of the ways to make the transition, I'll give you two. One is listen more. Just ask. What do we need right now in the family? Do you need me to listen? Do you need me to fix it? Do you need me to not fix it? So ask questions, and that would be appropriate at work also. Ask, and every person at home is a different person, so you would interact and have a relationship with them differently depending on how they're wired. And the other thing, and quite often I'll say to men, grab a piece of paper, write down on the front side all the one-word descriptions of a good leader, and then flip over the page and write all the one-word descriptions of a bad leader, micromanager, doesn't listen, arrogant, a jerk, all those things.
Yes.
And then just remember that when you get home.
Right.
Pull it out, and that will help you in a transition. So if you're listening and then you're just aware and you overcome this leadership amnesia, I think you can transition very well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
So good. Okay, Venita,
Yes.
I'm coming to you because
Okay.
I too have had the benefit of hearing your story
Okay.
and knowing just about you guys and gleaning from you guys and your wisdom and kindness to us, and loved getting to know y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that for a lot of us, some of the things that happen in our marriage begin before we get married.
Yes.
And come from our family of origin.
Right.
And so
Yes,
your story is
absolutely.
unique because you
Mhm.
had some particular challenges in your family of origin,
Mhm.
which ultimately led to some challenges in your marriage.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about that. Start with your
Okay.
family and then
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
transition into
Okay.
how that affected you and Tony.
Okay. Yeah, I was raised in a military family. So my father was in the Air Force, and we moved around. And um, a military environment is probably, it can be a reflection of the world at large, but things are concentrated, and so they're intense.
Hmm.
And one of the things, as much as I love the military, there's a lot of alcoholism and just a lot. With almost every family, somebody's drinking or may have I shouldn't say every, excuse me,
Yeah.
but in general.
Mhm.
So that occurred in my family.
Yeah.
And so both of my parents drank from an early age.
Mhm.
And they were functional, but it was just the way of life
Okay.
that one or the other would be drunk. And so what that does is there's many characteristics of how a person develops with their coping mechanisms, and they're different characteristics. But one of mine was that I was an achiever, but the main thing that the alcoholism made me do to cope was to shut down and push people away. In other words, I just didn't want to be intimate. I
Mhm.
didn't like I'm not comfortable in close relationships. You can only get so far,
Okay.
and then I would push back. So that is the present that I brought to my marriage. It's just this idea of, I could function while we were dating, right? It didn't show up in the dating relationship, but once you're married and the goal is to be one, then that's a whole different level of intimacy that it takes to be one and to exist in a oneness relationship. And that was something that I did not want to do, and I didn't know how to do. So I didn't know really how to receive all the love that he wanted to give me. What I knew was that I could let him get so close, and then I push him away, and you push away by being you can be mean, not wanting to connect sexually for periods of time, creating chaos where I would, make drama. And so that drama would then create distance. And so then I would be okay. I remember even in our relationship, sometimes the harder we fought, the better I slept. Because he doesn't want to sleep.
Oh, wow.
He wants everything resolved. So we would stay up at night, really late at night, trying to resolve our relationships. And the more he talked, the better I slept. And I would just fall asleep on him. I'd be like, yeah, tell me all your issues. And I'm just sitting here, and I would go into deep sleeps, and he could never figure that out.
Yeah.
And later on, as I went into counseling, I made that connection that this chaos is something that I
comfort.
learned I learned how to deal with it
Yeah.
by comforting myself in it. It's all strange. The human brain, we got all different kinds of ways that we cope, but that was my mechanism. So I did bring in,
So do you
this
do you think
desire.
little kids that grow up in a home like that, so the outcome for
Mm-hmm.
you was a fear of intimacy, of resistance to getting very close to people.
Sure.
So what do you think? How do little kids? How do adults become like that? What experiences did they have as little kids that inform that?
I think it's the dynamics of a relationship with your mom and dad or your family of origin that you don't trust. You can't trust. You don't know what's coming next. You don't know what parent is going to show up. Is it your nice dad or your not so nice dad?
Right.
Is it your nice mom or your not so nice mom? Is it yelling among themselves, and will there be a fist fight or will there not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that a lot of that, at least in the days when I was little, things could just be volatile very
Yeah.
quickly.
Mhm.
And so there's a mistrust. And so the brain is just going to be like, look, I'm going to protect myself and I'm just going to go inward and
Mhm.
I'm going to block out. And then it's a natural result of
And
not
yeah,
trusting.
because it's
Yeah.
like for a little kid,
Hmm.
your mom and dad,
They're your
everyone
world.
knows these people are obligated to take care of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And when they don't, all parents are imperfect and they
Right.
fail. But when they don't, and then it happens over and over and over again,
Yes.
you
Mhm.
start to get, okay, I have to find other ways
Right.
Hmm.
of
Mhm.
managing. You know,
Yes.
Yeah.
I need care,
Yeah.
but it's not
Yeah.
coming from these people, and so I got to
Right.
find other ways. And
Right.
really, we end up trusting
Yeah.
ourselves.
Right. And this happens not just in alcoholism, but any kind
Yeah.
of dysfunction, just because we're in
Mhm.
sinful,
Absolutely,
relationships with
Yeah.
our family of origin. So, and I think the longer that the science grows and neuroscience and all that, the more they just discover that we're all in the same soup. Like this is just this is like, let's put it all in the soup and then we can all work on it together
Mhm.
and learn the techniques that are going to help us to heal from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Tony,
Yeah,
say a
so-
little bit about your grown up. You were adopted. You were in foster care to begin with, and then
Right.
you're adopted. So can you say just a
Yes.
little bit about that journey?
So I was given up at foster care at birth. My mom was 21, single, unmarried, and just a difficult time. It was in the 60s,
Yeah.
and she was white, and the father was black. So just having a child of mixed color was not as acceptable back then as it is now. So she gave me up to foster care, and then I was adopted at 2.5, and then didn't find out I was adopted until I was 9. So that was a discovery that, my dad had to both explain the birds and the bees and adoption at the same time.
Oh, wow.
He did it in the same talk.
Yes, and
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, wow. And he
Yeah.
was a guy's guy, so
Yeah.
he was very awkward in how he did it. I wish I had that on video, but so then I was at 9, and then grew up knowing I was adopted, and that had impact, not as much as it could, because my parents were in a very good place. They were loving. They weren't perfect by any stretch, but they were very loving. I never had any doubt about the safety and security and the nurturing of my parents. They were a very tough love. It was. I tell the story when I got my first car, my dad towed it back from the junkyard. It didn't run. And he said, if you want a car, you'll make it run. So everything was a lesson,
Yeah.
So it was tough love. But, I came out of that learning a lot of skills and learning how to deal with life.
Yeah.
So it was a very stable environment.
Oh, that's really good. And so you guys come up.
Yeah, total
And then-
opposite.
yeah.
He's like
Yeah.
the Renaissance guy, raised
Yeah.
on a farm, loving parents, just so much.
Knows how
there's
to work
nothing
on a
he can't-
car.
Yeah, you can't- I was like, that really attracted me to him,
Sure. Yeah.
And I felt like my military background and just being in a multicultural environment and bringing these experiences and very pliable when it came to just going in and out of different relationships and relating to people. I feel like that was my superpower that I
Yeah.
brought to the relationship. We are different.
Yeah.
We're so different. And
Yeah.
so
And
we
then-
loved
And
different.
then, yeah.
And then, so
And
how
then,
did that
Well,
relating to one another, your families of origin, all the
yeah.
things that you
well,
brought
there
in?
was a crisis that brought it all up,
Mhm.
that brought up the gap in our differences and was a test to see how we would respond. But I woke up one day, it was in '02, I turned 40, January 1st, and I had this ringing in my ear. It was just very, very intense, tinnitus. That eventually went away after 4 months, but in the process of me trying to cope with this intense ringing, not knowing would it ever go away and feeling like it would not go away and nobody having any answers. There just are none. I became very depressed. That's not unusual because it's in your ear. And I just took a dive. And as much as I knew about the Bible, as instructed as I was a Bible teacher, a mentor, all these things. I had a lot of knowledge,
Mhm.
and I even had experience. But sometimes we are just thrown in the pit.
Yeah.
And so my response was to go inward, which
Mhm.
is what I do as a person, adult child of an alcoholic. And I just behaved in ways that were they were not healthy for my relationship. The bottom line is I didn't want to be married.
Mm.
All of a sudden I was just like, I would look at him and be like, I just don't want to be with you and I don't want to be a mom. and my kids were being homeschooled in middle school at that time, and I just wanted to run. So I would just get in the car and just drive around all day just to make the time go away. My kids were old enough that they could, take care of themselves. And it was just a response that really surprised me. And so that's what I did. I just wanted to abandon him, and I did emotionally. I abandoned my kids emotionally. Physically, I wasn't responsive to him, and it hurt him. It took him by surprise. I took a deep dive, but about 6 months later, I was able to, the Lord brought me out. And then I was like, okay, I really have to work on these adult children of alcoholic tendencies that I have, and what it has brought to my marriage
Yeah.
that I want to push away. And so we worked on it for a 3-year period. And so there's there's a story in and of that, but I will say it wasn't even until 2016, even though I had learned a lot, there was still residue from that intimacy and knowing that information, but there was still so much more to learn. So in 2016, there was another crisis, and it took me 4 years to actually learn all the things that I needed to learn about that.
Yeah.
And even still now, I'm still coming out and learning the depth of how this affects my intimacy with him.
Yeah.
And so it's an ongoing process. And I say that because a lot of people think, oh, once you see something, once you know the solution, we still got to do a lot of work. And that work is not linear. It is up and down, back and forth. It's intentional, it's not intentional. There's still a lot of pain that you have to go to get to that final destination, which I'm still not there. And it's a journey for life. It's a journey that only the Holy Spirit can really bring you through, along with your decision to intentionally say, I'm going to do the work. Many, many times we want that supernatural, like, oh God, just let me wake up and it be gone. God has a part for us to play. That is obedience, that's submission, that's belief, that's faith. It's work.
Yeah.
And so, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
That's good.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it sounds like the Lord has been taking you through this journey, but like you said, I love that. It's not linear,
Yeah.
ups and downs. And as it is with marriage, if you're going through a journey, so are
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so tell us about that. Like, what did that look like for you during that time period?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just an expectation that, well, when you love someone, they just return it. I mean, in marriage, nobody would ever have a reason to not want to be close to each other. What's wrong with this picture? So that was my expectation and almost my blind spot, if you will. And as we started to go through the different seasons of discovery, I can remember the first time I even heard the term adult children of alcoholics. We were sitting in a Barnes and Noble, and I was reading a book about the symptoms and some of these tendencies that Venita is referencing. And when I read it, I'm like, they are really reflecting what's going on in my marriage. And then when we went to the crisis that occurred in 2002, and then as we unpacked that after 3 years after that occurrence, I was like, okay, there's a fear of intimacy. She was raised in an environment where being intimate in a relational intimacy was actually going to hurt you. So she was in essence trained to be on guard and to not get close. So I'm expecting her to do something that doesn't come naturally to her. And that's what we learned in counseling. And then in 2016, it was a whole nother level of discovery in saying why intimacy is not a natural occurrence for her. So I had to learn compassion and understanding that, hey, I know this sounds strange, but everybody's not wired like you, Tony, you know?
Yeah.
So she's just not wired that way. You as her loving husband have to actually help her in her healing journey. And that requires sacrifice on you, that you can't expect her to just be the way you would think a normal person, quote, using that term loosely, would be. It's like, well, if I love you, you just love me back. Well, no, if I lived through the experiences she lived through, that would not be my response. And I might not even handle it as well as she does. And she has not lived through some of my experiences, so she can't expect me to respond the way she would because I had different life experiences in my family of origin. So it was an adjustment. And I, part of me was like, well, why do I have to help you heal?
Right.
I just want you. You know,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
just
yeah,
be
yeah.
friends. You know,
Right.
but
Right.
that's marriage.
Yeah. Well, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you about this, but
That's
you,
all right.
you have a good story about a chicken that I think
Oh.
Tony's a good storyteller. But I think the principle that's in that story might apply to what a lot of marriages really need to
Yes.
do when it comes to staying together, making your way through
Yes.
adversity. Every
Yes.
marriage has adversity,
Yes.
and every person that is married is broken,
Yes.
like you said. And no matter how we got to that brokenness.
Yes.
But tell the chicken story really
All right,
quick.
I'll tell the short version. So I grew up on a farm, and we moved to the farm when I was 9 and my brother was 7. So right around when I was around 9 or 10 years old, we were in culture shock moving from the city to a farm. And one of the things is being around animals was not something that we were used to. And roosters are extremely territorial animals, extremely territorial, and they fight for who's king rooster of the yard. So we had this one rooster that was blind in one eye. So being the creative young men that we were at 10 and 8, we named him One Eye. And One Eye would chase us around the yard. So we were terrified to go outside in our own yard and our own house. So my dad, who I mentioned was a tough love dad, he came out one day and he looked at us running around scared to death of these chickens and especially One Eye.
Animals.
And he just looks at us and he goes, "Boys, what in the world are you letting this chicken chase you around the yard? This is not One Eye's yard. This is your yard. And what I want you to do when he comes after you is I want you to kick him in the chest as hard as you can and let him know who's boss. And if you don't, I'll whoop you." So now we've got to decide like, okay, whooping from dad, which hurts, or stand up to One Eye.
Yeah.
So we stood up to One Eye. The first time he came after us, my brother looks at me and he goes, "Hey, you're the big brother." So I had to kick him and I kick him and he gets back up. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? It's like he didn't say he'd get back up. So he gets back up. He comes at me. I kick him again and he falls on his back again. And then he gets back up, looks at me and he walks away. And I'm like raising my hands. I am king of the yard. And what I say when we speak is that there's a One Eye rooster in your marriage that is kicking your butt. And the reason I had courage was not because I had courage, but because my dad told me that was my yard and I needed to take charge. And that's the same thing in our marriage. The enemy is out there, whether it's the culture or Satan, they are out there to destroy your marriage. And they want to be king of your marriage. But our Father in heaven says that is not their territory. This is your yard. So stand up and kick One Eye and take back your marriage.
Amen.
That's what you did.
That's exactly what you did.
And we did. And now we're married, like you said, 39 years.
39 years.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's great.
that is a fantastic spot to end this. And I thank you. I thank you for saying that story about One Eye.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm sure he's no longer with us. He was probably,
No, God.
Yeah, he's
Oh, my
God.
goodness,
Yeah.
but that is, every marriage is under threat,
Yes.
and Jesus is the hope for every marriage.
Amen.
And the gospel is enough to heal the brokenness that that got buried deep in us when we were little kids, and it's durable enough to go beyond the things that we don't know are going to happen to us yet.
Right.
You know, there may be sickness or something like that around the corner that we don't see. We put our hope in Jesus,
Yes.
and we bring under his authority everything that's coming against us.
Yep.
So thank you guys for sharing your story with us. I appreciate you both so much.
You're
love y'all.
more than
Thank
welcome.
you.
Love you guys.
so
Thank you.
much.
for
Tony and
opportunity.
Venita Mitchell.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Tony and
All
Venita.
right,
Love y'all.
Thank you.
Yep.
You can learn more about the podcast and carlandheather.com. We'll see you next time.
Together on purpose.
Together on purpose.
You want to give us
We
some
do a
down?
fist bump.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's